Hello, my friends and fellow travelers. This is the Grand Duke Dmitri diary series, and we're taking a kind of strange road trip through his life. At the moment, we're in 1921 on the 1st of April. So we finished up with the 15th of April. Now we're going back in time, as was his custom with his diaries, to look at his daily life, a recap. So last time, the final section of the long diary entry of the 15th, he was indulging, I would say, in a little bit of projection with respect to General Wrangel's desire to take leadership of the entire emigre community, and the critique that Dmitri makes of what Wrangel wants to do is a bit ironic, given that that was what the monarchist movement wanted to do. So, a little bit of projection, although it was true that what Wrangel was doing was also sort of quixotic, genuine. It was genuinely silly to think that one could keep this tight-knit, very concentrated and focused emigration with a single leader to rally around and perpetually in waiting to go back into Russia. It was folly on the part of the monarchists. It was folly on the part of the liberals. It was folly on the part of Wrangel's organization or movement, but no more one than any of the others. Okay, so what is our cast today? Well, we have Grand Duke Boris, or Boris in the Russian pronunciation, and his brother-in-law, Vladimir Rashevsky, and then, of course, Dmitri and Coco. All right, so 1st April 1921, it's a Friday in Monte Carlo at the Riviera Palace Hotel. Here we go. The days passed rather monotonously during my stay in Monte Carlo, but from that it does not at all follow that I was bored or unwell. On the contrary, Coco did everything she could to draw me out, fearing apparently that quiet life would quickly bore me. But I have to admit, frankly, that it was incomparably more pleasant to stay at home than to be in a state of constant trembling over the possibility of running into acquaintances in a restaurant, on the street, or in the casino. No, it seems I'm absolutely incapable of such cohabitation on the left hand. It is beyond question a constant burden to me. I was terribly frightened that Coco, who is surprisingly observant, would perceive my feelings, but even if she did, she couldn't say anything because she herself was very interested in avoiding having too much visibility, fearing gossip. That morning I went golfing, and before I left, I stopped by to say hello to Coco, which had already become part of my daily routine. Naturally, she hadn't gotten out of bed yet. It was a very pleasant day to play golf. All these days, the weather has been wonderful, warm, not very windy, in short, worthy of the Riviera's reputation. Okay, that confuses me a little. I'm not sure when he says all these days what time span he's referring to, because certainly he has described quite a few days that had overcast, windy, rainy weather. But, oh well, I thought that was it. Sorry, there's another paragraph. Okay, I returned for lunch. Coco and I ate in La Tourbie. We really like it there. The food is simple, but everything is very tasty and fresh, in addition to which we never run into any acquaintances there. Afterwards, I took the wheel and with Coco seated beside me, drove to Nice. It's very difficult to come up with fresh options for driving routes here. All roads lead not to Rome, but to Nice. We went back to Monte Carlo for tea, which we had at Orest. That afternoon I saw Boris from a distance driving by in an automobile with his beau-frere. He greeted me rather sourly. Coco and I spent the evening at the casino. I lost, but only a little. We dined upstairs and went to bed very early. Okay, again, it would be interesting to know his time frame, how early it is that he gets up to play golf, and what time he considers very early to go to bed. I really have no idea. So this particular diary entry, as you can tell, is suffused with a mood of mild depression. And Dmitri is always a little bit more poetic on those occasions when he's really depressed. He's just laconic and prone to lashing out at people. But when he's just mildly depressed, that's kind of when he's at his more interesting. When he's at his most interesting, he's communicative. He's, a little poetic and sometimes also a nicer and more generous person. Okay, so Boris's brother-in-law, Vladimir Sergeyevich Rashevsky, who was a year younger than Dmitri, and his sister Zinaida had been Boris's mistress in Imperial Russia, and then Boris was very quick to marry her in exile. He was much less hesitant than Andrei, for instance, to take that step and to marry her. So this was his brother-in-law, and apparently, from what I hear, he was close to his mistress's, now wife's, family, and was good to them. Hopefully that's true. Now, I still don't know what left hand means in relation to having a mistress or cohabitation. Maybe it just means morganatic, or not quite respectable, or I don't know. I don't know. Dmitri didn't have any issues with being clearly with Coco in Paris on a daily basis. And he wasn't trying to avoid being seen with her. But this whole idea, I guess, of cohabitation, of being a kept man, that was what bothered him. And he's almost obsessive, isn't he, about being seen. That's the main topic of his diary entries, it almost seems like. And I don't think for 1 minute that it's fake concern. We've talked about where he was at with that and how he'd always planned to make a dynastic marriage, or at least a very respectable one, with somebody like Gugi, Marie-Louise Moltke. And, it really is weighing him down. That's crystal clear. So he's a little bit worried about offending Coco, but maybe not so much, My question is, was Coco... So Coco is saying that she's as worried as he is. She's sending him into the restaurants first to scout them out and that sort of thing. But I wonder if that was really the case, because it just doesn't seem like she had as much at stake. It wasn't like she was trying to give people the impression that she was doing everything in a conventional way with regard to, relationships. Whereas Dmitri was trying to give people, well, as I say, he wasn't worried about being with Coco in Paris. He wasn't worried about people thinking that he was having flings, but this whole idea of being in a serious relationship and cohabitation, as he puts it. That was what was worrying him. But, you know, he was lucky, wasn't he? Because he lived in an age when you didn't have paparazzi buzzing around you. And, you know, can you imagine how horrified he would have been by that? Maybe that happened later. But, you know, I know he was appearing in gossip columns, but there weren't, you know, people from People magazine or you know, any of the celebrity-oriented websites or social media or TV programs that we have nowadays. So he didn't know how lucky he was in terms of the age he was living in. So like I said, I don't know how early he was getting up and going to play golf every day. So maybe it wasn't sort of self-indulgent for Coco, who was obviously awake, to be lying around in bed when Dmitri came in the morning to just say, hi, I'm going to play golf now. But, you know, it's funny because I kind of get the impression from the other women in Dmitri's life that it was acceptable for women of means, for wealthy women, to lay around in bed in the morning, lie around in bed in the morning, and have breakfast in bed and sort of be pampered in that way. But it was not acceptable for men. At least it wasn't acceptable for Dmitri, who was more or less, you know, it was important to him to do things in a way that was properly manly. And no matter how tired he was, or even if he'd gotten home at 6 a.m, he was not going to lie in bed in the morning. He was going to get up. He could take a nap later in the afternoon. But men apparently just didn't do that. Lucia Marling, in fact, would even, for, say, 2 weeks at a time, say, well, I've been feeling run down lately, so I'm going to take to my bed and I'm going to lie in bed for 2 weeks and not get out of bed. And that's kind of taking things to an extreme, but, you know, apparently that was acceptable for a woman, but I think not for a man. Okay. So, this encounter with Boris. Well, Dmitri has told us twice now that Boris was simply driving by in a car and he saw him from a distance, but he's implying here that they also were close enough and the car was going slow enough that they could acknowledge each other. So maybe Dmitri had, you know, given him a wave and said hello, and it sounds like Boris returned the wave or the hello, but was kind of scowling. That could have just been Dmitri's impression. You know, Boris maybe had no notion that he was scowling or being unfriendly. Who knows? So what do we have next time? Well, a letter from Googie. That's not exactly convenient. All right, and so there's that. And then no golf. Not because Dmitri didn't want to play golf, but because it just wasn't possible that particular day. And because there was no golf, they were a little more adventurous, and they go out and have an interesting experience on one of their drives. And so, yeah, come back for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.